strip Harry and Meghan of their royal titles. The New York Post is reporting that locals in the UK say enough is enough, especially after Prince Harry's disastrous BBC interview, which aired.
It started with a whisper inside palace walls, but within hours it turned into a full-blown royal emergency.
There are reports that Prince Harry, Meghan Markle and their children could be set to lose their royal titles if and when Prince William becomes...
I don't think he's going to forgive Harry.
Prince Harry, mid-flight over the Atlantic, racing back to the UK after a chilling warning spread through Buckingham Palace.
Your titles are gone. You're going to be Meghan Mountbatten-Windsor. Your husband's going to be Harry Mountbatten-Windsor. And all your threats of legal action, I think, are something that William will quite rightly stare down. But let me take you through.
Titles on the line, legacy on the line, his entire identity on the edge of a knife.
He's willing to even sacrifice the titles of his children in order to clean the Windsor house, because enough is enough. And Harry and Meghan know it.
And behind it all, a sudden power shift, one so sharp, so fast, so ruthless, that even Harry didn't see it coming. Stay with me, because the real danger isn't the flight. It's what's waiting for him when he lands.
Meghan is just still that desperate starlet trying to cling on to any bit of fame and fortune that she can get her hands on. Despite climbing up the pole, the highest that anybody could ever go, she slid straight back down to where she was before she even met.
The headlines made it sound dramatic, but the truth behind them was even worse. According to insiders, Prince Harry didn't leisurely plan a trip home or schedule a quiet reunion. He bolted, jumping on a private jet the moment he realized just how close he was to losing everything tied to his royal identity. Not the fame, not the noise, the titles, the lineage, the name itself, and the call that set all of this into motion. It came straight out of Buckingham Palace, where pressure has been building like a cracked dam about to burst. For weeks, royal watchers whispered about growing frustration behind closed doors. But whispers turned into strategy meetings, and strategy meetings turned into full-scale planning.
There's much of a relationship between William and Andrew, but I think Harry and Meghan should be shaking in their boots right now if they are not already. And they could have had the best of all worlds if they had played their cards right.
Harry and Meghan's titles weren't just in question, they were actively being prepared for removal. This wasn't rumor. This wasn't tabloid speculation. This was the monarchy making moves with urgency not seen since the days after Queen Elizabeth passed. And every sign pointed to one man orchestrating the entire operation, Prince William. While King Charles fights his illness with dignity, William has quietly stepped into the power vacuum. And insiders say he's running the monarchy like a CEO under fire. Sharp, efficient, ice cold when necessary. And in his calculations, Harry and Meghan aren't wounded family members who need support. They're liabilities, walking PR disasters, storm clouds. The Crown has no patience for anymore. Every interview, every book, every podcast, every headline, William sees it all as erosion, damage, noise that threatens the future he's preparing to inherit. And then came the trigger.
But I really do feel it will happen, and I think it's important to note that it won't be a revenge play.
Harry's controversial interview aired just hours after he lost his appeal for taxpayer-funded security in the UK. The public backlash was immediate and brutal. People weren't just annoyed this time, they were done. The shift in sentiment wasn't subtle. The calls to strip the Sussexes of their titles grew louder, bolder, more confident. And William heard them. So when the king's health took a sudden downturn, everything inside Buckingham Palace changed. Staffers described the mood as colder and more serious, like the usual emotional buffer between royal family and royal institution had suddenly vanished. The quiet succession had begun, and William's leadership was unmistakable. Decisions were swift, discussions were short, sympathy was replaced with strategy. For Harry, the message was unmistakable. Get here, now. Not for reconciliation, not for tea, for consequences. And as Harry raced across the Atlantic, those watching from the outside didn't see the real story.
We're in America now, and we don't give a shit about you. You're not our fucking prince. You'll never be king. We hate your wife. Stay at home in your $29 million man.
The quiet removal of his place in the hierarchy. While the plane cut through the clouds, meetings continued in London. Legal teams reviewed precedents. Advisors mapped out procedures. Every minute Harry was in the air, the monarchy moved one step closer to erasing the titles he once took for granted. When he lands, he won't be walking into a family moment. He'll be walking into a verdict. Harry's flight wasn't a reunion. It was a countdown. Because while he was staring out the cabin window somewhere over the Atlantic, Buckingham Palace was transforming into a war room. And at the center of that storm was Prince William. No longer the calm, approachable future king people used to know, but a man shaping the monarchy with the precision of a surgeon and the firmness of a general. Insiders say the moment King Charles's condition worsened, something inside William switched. Gone was the gentle heir who once tried to keep peace. In his place stood a leader laser-focused on survival, of the crown, of the institution, and of the legacy he will inherit.
Harry's digging an even bigger hole for himself here.
Well, I think he's dug so deep now, he'll strike water any day now.
Strategy meetings ramped up. Advisors were called at all hours. And one by one, pieces of the monarchy's future began shifting into place. And Harry? He was at the top of the list. To William, the monarchy isn't family, it's a brand. A global institution that can't afford scandal or chaos. And in his eyes, Harry and Meghan had become the biggest threats to that brand in decades. Every documentary, every podcast, every tell-all confession, every bold accusation, each one chipped away at the crown's authority. And while Charles led with compassion, William leads with control, sharp, objective, and unbothered by sentiment. That's why the plan to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles didn't come from revenge. It came from calculation. William believes the monarchy can't move forward until it cuts loose the people dragging it backward. And with Charles fighting illness, William finally had the freedom to pull the strings. Meanwhile, Meghan was reacting very differently across the ocean.
Here's the story right here. Reported by The Express, Prince Harry loses family title as other royals steps in to replace him.
Reports claim she panicked the second she realized the seriousness of the situation. This wasn't an argument with the media. This wasn't a palace rumor. This was real. This was legal. This was the kind of royal action you can't undo with a PR statement. For Meghan, losing the Duchess title wasn't just symbolic. It meant the collapse of every brand, every partnership, every venture she had leveraged that royal identity for. But things got worse when Radar Online reported that Meghan was already preparing to go legal, bracing for William to come after the titles she's clung to since stepping away from royal duties. The panic wasn't theatrical, it was strategic, because Meghan knows something most people forget. The monarchy moves slowly, until it doesn't. And the last few weeks had been moving at lightning speed. Inside Buckingham Palace, advisors described the shift as alarming. The tone, the pace, the decisions, everything felt different. One staff member even said the family stopped operating on emotion and started operating on survival.
This fascinating reporting from Radar Online, and it's their British-based reporter Aaron Tinney, a tabloid veteran, who writes, Meghan Markle already preparing to go legal over fears Prince William will inevitably come for her Duchess title. And he writes, Meghan Markle is panicked and defiant.
And in survival mode, mistakes aren't forgiven. They're eliminated. And then came the poll. A poll so shocking that it sent ripples through the entire palace. One that showed nearly half of Britain believed Meghan Markle was more damaging to the monarchy than Prince Andrew, a man at the center of one of the darkest scandals in royal history. For William, that poll wasn't gossip. It was proof, a green light, a mandate. And Harry, thousands of feet above the ocean, had no idea just how bad things had become. When the poll numbers hit the palace, everything shifted. William didn't rage. He didn't slam doors. He didn't say a word. According to insiders, he simply stared at the report in silence, long enough for staff to realize something permanent had just clicked into place. That silence was more terrifying than anger, because William isn't the type to explode. He's the type to decide, and he decided that the monarchy could no longer afford Harry and Meghan. From that moment on, the conversations inside Buckingham Palace stopped being if and became when. Advisors began quietly reviewing legal options, parliamentary procedures, historical precedents. Some reached as far back as the 1930s, others pulled from more recent removals. This wasn't speculation. This was infrastructure being built, paperwork being drafted, a path being prepared, and the plan forming behind closed doors. It was brutally simple. Step 1, strip Prince Andrew of everything. Step 2, use that exact precedent to remove Harry and Meghan's titles. Quietly, cleanly, legally. No drama, no speeches, no explosions, just a signature backed by procedure.
I can't even. These two, Meghan and Harry, are the worst.
Even people sympathetic to Harry admitted it was clever. Once Parliament sets a precedent, the palace can simply say, we're following the rules. It wouldn't look personal. It wouldn't look emotional. It would look like modernization. a word the palace uses when it wants to remove someone without the public noticing the knife. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Meghan was preparing for battle. Reports said she was already consulting legal teams, furious that her Duchess title, something the late Queen explicitly warned her not to commercialize, was now the very reason it could be taken away. Because Meghan hadn't just used her title. She had built a business around it, her podcast, her brand deals, her new cosmetics venture with glossy photoshoots and celebrity stylists. Everything leaned on her Duchess name. And William's advisors saw it as rebellion. The Queen's rule was clear: do not use your royal title for personal profit. But Meghan didn't just ignore the rule, she flipped it into a marketing strategy. And now, that choice was coming back with legal force. Inside Hollywood, some whispered that Meghan's influence was already fading. Deals stalling, staff leaving, projects underperforming. Even the awards she showcased online were, according to insiders, minor industry recognitions, polished to look like major triumphs.
This weekend, because there were some business cards in the back of one of her podcasts, she's still using her royal title, HRH, despite our late Queen warning her.
William's team noticed every detail, and they kept receipts. To them, Meghan wasn't misunderstood. She was unpredictable, calculating, a PR risk with a royal title attached. And Harry, he was becoming something even worse, a loose end. Friends say the prince had become restless, anxious, unsure of who he was without the structure of the institution he walked away from. California was supposed to be peace. Instead, it became the breeding ground for headlines he couldn't control. Now, thousands of miles away from home, trapped between two worlds, Harry found himself fearing something he never thought possible. That William's version of the monarchy had no place for him at all. And as his plane cut through the night sky toward London, the truth settled over him like a weight he couldn't shake. He wasn't flying toward forgiveness, he was flying toward consequences. While Harry's plane powered through the night, the palace was already tightening its grip. This wasn't just William stepping up, this was William taking over. Insiders call it the quiet succession, a power shift happening in real time, masked behind polite statements and carefully posed photos. But behind closed doors, it's all strategy. No emotion, no nostalgia, no brotherly warmth. William has become the decision maker. Diplomats meet with him first, advisors brief him before they brief the king. Staff follow his pace, his rules, his expectations.
Not a financial thing. Working royals do not profit. They do not use their names to make money. It's an honour to have an HRH.
Absolutely.
So the fact that she's continued to use this HRH when they've been instructed not to.
A decade ago, no one would have predicted this version of William, sharper, harder, and fiercely protective of the monarchy's future. But King Charles's illness changed everything. And when power shifts, priorities shift with it, and Harry, whether he realizes it or not, has become the monarchy's biggest liability. In California, Meghan was pushing forward with rebranding efforts, but palace insiders were tracking every move. Her new beauty line, her Instagram teasers, her team of stylists, photographers, Hollywood consultants, all of it fueled one concern inside Buckingham Palace. Meghan was turning her Duchess title into a commercial empire. And that was the late Queen's red line. Her Majesty had left clear instructions. Titles are for duty, not profit. But Meghan blurred that line on purpose and proudly. Now William's advisors viewed it not as ambition, but as defiance. And defiance couldn't be ignored. While Meghan leaned into Hollywood glamour, Harry was crumbling under the pressure. Friends say he's restless, angry, confused. A man caught between defending his wife and mourning the institution he abandoned. He left for freedom, but all he found was noise. He chased peace, but ended up with chaos. He escaped royal expectations, but now he's fading in a world where titles, or the loss of them, define everything. And the palace noticed. Advisors whispered that Harry's recent attempts to reconnect felt less like sincerity and more like strategy. His calls, his requests, even his sudden desire for a private conversation with William and Charles before boarding that jet, it all looked like a man trying to stop a decision that was already in motion. But the palace didn't reply. Not a text, not a call, nothing. Because silence is the monarchy's sharpest weapon. Silence means you no longer have access, you no longer have influence, you no longer matter in the decision-making room. Meanwhile, Meghan continued presenting curated success online, the awards, the promotional shots, the glowing captions. But inside Hollywood, insiders whispered a harsher truth. The podcast struggled, the ratings dipped, Spotify moved on, and even her new ventures weren't gaining momentum. The shine was fading, and fast. William's team saw opportunity, because when perception weakens, power can shift. So they kept notes, they documented the failures, the contradictions, the PR stumbles, not out of vengeance, but out of preparation. Every slip, every headline, every misstep became another brick in the case, for removing the Sussex titles permanently. And with every hour that passed, Harry's isolation grew. He once had the Queen to soften decisions. He once had Charles to protect him. He once had a role the monarchy needed. Now, there's no buffer, no safety net, no shield. There is only William, steady, strategic, unstoppable, shaping a monarchy with no room for distractions. And Harry, hurtling through the clouds toward London, was starting to understand the truth. This wasn't a family matter anymore. It was a system moving on without him. As Harry's plane descended toward London, the reality waiting for him on the ground was far different from the home he once knew. No warm welcomes, no emotional reunions, no last-minute forgiveness. The palace gates might open, but they wouldn't open for a son. They'd open for a man walking into consequences. Behind those gates, William's two-step plan was already taking shape. No shouting, no dramatic confrontations, just procedure. Cold, controlled, and wrapped in the language of modernization. Strip Andrew publicly, strip Harry and Meghan quietly. Let the law do the talking, let the institution do the heavy lifting, and let the public believe it's simply the monarchy evolving for a new era. But the truth was much darker. This wasn't evolution. This was elimination. William's vision for the monarchy is sharp and polished. Fewer working royals, fewer scandals, fewer loose ends. A streamlined crown with zero tolerance for distractions. And Harry, once the fun uncle, the soldier prince, the global favorite, had become the biggest distraction of all. A royal without duties, a celebrity without stability, a man without a place. And Meghan, to the palace, she wasn't just a distraction. She was a threat. Her refusal to let go of the HRH title, her commercial ventures, her Hollywood branding strategies, her rebel Duchess persona. Everything she did screamed independence in a system built on obedience. And in William's monarchy, independence, especially when mixed with profit, is rebellion, and rebellion must be dealt with. Inside Buckingham Palace, the YouGov poll was still circulating, its numbers impossible to ignore. Nearly half of Britain believed Meghan Markle posed a greater danger to the monarchy than Prince Andrew. That statistic alone became ammunition, not because it was shocking, but because it gave William exactly what he needed: public permission. As one palace aide told the Mirror, he made his choice. Now he's facing the consequences. That single line carried more weight than any royal statement, because it made one thing clear: Harry wasn't being punished. He was being removed, and Meghan knew it. Her team brushed off the poll as media bias, but the palace saw through it. Bias doesn't move a nation's opinion, public exhaustion does. And the public was exhausted. Meanwhile, Harry wrestled with a life he didn't fully understand. Freedom wasn't what he expected. California, once seen as peace, became a spotlight he couldn't escape. Headlines he couldn't control. Deals he couldn't manage. And behind the scenes, even his immigration status raised concerns, because becoming a U.S. citizen would mean renouncing his titles permanently. For a man raised under royal protection, losing that safety net was terrifying. And now the final picture was coming into focus. No Duke and Duchess of Sussex, no Prince Archie, no Princess Lilibet, just Harry and Meghan Mountbatten-Windsor. Two former royals navigating a world that once adored them but no longer needs them. Those titles weren't just labels, they were shields. Without them, the Sussex empire begins to crack. When Harry steps off that plane, he won't just be returning to his homeland, he'll be walking straight into a palace that has already written his ending. Because in this new version of the monarchy, the one shaped by William, sharpened by crisis, and fueled by public pressure, even a prince isn't safe from consequences. And this time, the consequences are permanent.